Yeah. Let's flip to the other side of this polarity. Let's talk about exploration. So this is the other polarity opposite of introverted sensing and memory, right?
Yeah.
This is exploration's all about pattern making in the real world in real time. It's about real-time pattern making and really asking, well, what if we didn't have to start from here? What's possible? What if we took this and combined it with this? What could we make out of it?
Yep.
And doing that writ large.
So the basic use, you're kind of describing its basic use, but one could say that the basic use of this function is generating multiple possibilities and exploring different ideas, right? That's what the use of it is. You're trying to figure out all the different ways that something can be a thing. But the wisdom of extroverted intuition or exploration is seeing the interconnectedness of ideas and possibilities, understanding that reality is fluid and ever evolving, and embracing uncertainty as a source of creativity and growth. So brainstorming is the easiest way to see this function in action. Idea generating, passing around ideas back and forth. But brainstorming will not necessarily get you to a place of understanding the core wisdom, which is that reality is fluid and ever-changing.
Yeah. Well, it brings up for me that this is kind of the anti-accountability function. Like if I'm too accountable, and this actually happened to me recently.
Yeah.
If I'm too accountable, I can't be in the wisdom of this function. I almost have to be disruptive. I can't be accountable to what has come before. I can't be accountable to the commitments I've made. I can't be accountable to the way I've always done it. I have to try it to say, what if? I have to do a little different. And so in a way, it's a little bit of the opposite of what introverted sensing gives us. If introverted sensing is about rootedness and holding myself to account of what's happened, this needs to be untethered from that and be able to float and ask the questions that are kind of scary, difficult questions. Like, yeah, but what if we didn't have to X, Y, Z? What if we could do this thing over here and we didn't have to account for all of that that's come before?
Right.
I think there's wisdom in this, right? Because this allows us to do what you talked about, not just accepting what's come before and just doing it because it's always been done. It's going, no, well, why has this been done? How could we do it differently? What changes are needed here?
Yeah. Well, and the idea that everything is interconnected, there's that everything connects to each other is part of how we understand. It's part of how we understand implication. Yeah, I oftentimes think of implication as associated with introverted intuition or perspectives because it understands the implication of an action, right? Like, okay, if I do this thing, how is it going to play out? But implication is also what is it all touching? What is going to be involved by this thing? And if you see everything as this sort of spider web of interconnectedness, you realize that nobody's taking actions that only impact themselves. Like the things that we do, the ideas that we brew, like all of this stuff that comes up, it's going to have far-reaching implications, not just forward, but also sideways, right? Like there's a bunch of stuff that's going to get scooped up in here. And it's important to remember that. It's important to remember that we're all connected, right? And I don't mean it in like an extroverted feeling harmony, like all humans are connected. I mean like, like kind of in a
almost physical.
Yeah.
Almost like physics.
Yeah.
Like we're all part of the same matter in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. In an interesting way, there's like an interconnectedness of, like, I mean, this is how people come up with concepts and theories like, entanglement and stuff. It's like, well, there's a relationship that one creates with the terrain around them and the people that they communicate with. Like I could seed an idea in someone in a very quick conversation, somebody that I might have talked to for 15 minutes on a train or on a bus or something. And I might have seeded an idea in them that takes root, that now suddenly becomes like a massive thing. Like they now I gave them an idea that they ended up taking to a entrepreneurial level where now this little spark of something over, that maybe I was traveling across the world when I did it. I talked to somebody who I will never see again because they live 6,000 miles away from me, or whatever, or 10,000 miles away from me. And I've now helped create a whole, like a whole industry that I might never know. I might never know that any of that had to do with me. But there's an interconnectedness that means that we have influence. We have influence broad, like in a very broad way.
I think one of the best ways to experience this for the human, like if you're watching or listening, is go on to ChatGPT or some other AI tool at the time of this recording. Probably down the road, I'll sound so unsophisticated talking about this way. Like AI is so sophisticated by this point. But go on to a chatbot. Let's go to ChatGPT as an example, and just start to ideate with the chatbot. You'll know that the chatbot is connected to so much more than the conversation you're talking about.
Right.
Like no matter what you're talking about, it'll bring in thinking from all over the world, all over the internet, because the neural net's been trained on everything, right? It's large language models. They've mapped so much territory that there's no limits to where, as long as it's in the language model, it can go and find it. So when you are chatting about it, it'll bring a bunch of stuff in. You're like, that's not a topic. That's not what I asked. But it'll generate a lot of this because of the very thing you're talking about. It's the interconnected nature. So you can experience it in an acute, like visceral way with ChatGPT. But this is basically what you're speaking to with extroverted intuition or exploration. This is happening inside the brain for the intuition too.
Yes. And I think it's probably one of the reasons I hadn't thought about it until we were talking, but it just dawned on me. This is probably one of the reasons why I got into growth, personal development, not just for myself, but because I want to have clean enough processes that when I talk to people and influence them and persuade them of ideas, I want to make sure that I'm not unintentionally seeding not good things in the world.
Yeah.
Because I understand how much we cross-pollinate. Yeah. I understand the power of cross-pollination. And I want to be the kind of person that if I'm cross-pollinating, I'm doing it in as positive a way as I can.
Yeah.
And so there is a wisdom to keeping oneself. I mean, you said it's like the opposite of accountability, but it's accountability not for what I've done in the past. It's accountability for what I might do in the future.
Possibility.
Yeah, for the possibilities that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And how I might be engaging and interacting with them. And so it makes me more aware, right? It makes me I think it makes me a more responsible person when I tap into the wisdom of the function.
I think Elon Musk is a good example of somebody that's tapped in the wisdom of this. Mm-hmm. I'm reading his book right now, time of this recording. It's a brilliant book by Walter Isaacson, or I don't remember the guy's name, but it's good. He did the Steve Jobs book too. I think Elon Musk, and he's got this mantra. He keeps pushing. He's like, we're going to Mars. And everybody thinks he's nuts and absurd, but he's basically staying accountable to this possibility he sees on the forefront, like on the horizon. He's like, no, we got to get to space.
Right.
I see it's possible for humans. I think it's going to be important, whether you agree with him or not. He's certainly staying accountable to this vision, this possibility he sees in front of him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good example of maybe somebody tuning into that wisdom and staying like, no, we have to stay on this. Don't get caught up in the details here on Earth. We're focused on the stars, guys. That's kind of what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Right? That accountability to something that's possible in the future.
Somebody's going to come argue with you about Elon Musk's type, but yes, I agree.
The person that does that's an idiot. Elon Musk is awesome. Come on. If you are already like smarter or better than him and want to argue, come and do it. But if like he beats you on all categories on all levels, like why are you? Just stop that. Just don't.
I don't mean they're going to argue with you because you mentioned him. I mean they're going to argue with whether or not he's using extroverted intuition. But
to tune into the future.
Yeah.
To stay accountable.
Yeah, like somebody's gonna be like, he's an INTJ.
Who cares what function he's using?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Who cares what personality type he is? I'm talking about a function's wisdom he's tapped into.
Yep.
I don't care. Say he's an INTJ. I don't give two craps.
Yep.
I still think he's being accountable to extroverted intuition possibilities in the future.
I agree. Yep.
It doesn't matter.
All right. So, you want to swap over to a different polarity?
Sure.
Okay.